Good morning. Does it sound okay? My voice isn't, but whatever. So let's start. I'm Jouke Waleson. I'm the product manager of the Mendix Cloud, which until recently was the easiest way to deploy the Mendix applications that you built using the Mendix platform. I'm also the author of the Mendix build pack for Cloud Foundry, and now Cloud Foundry is a serious competitor, basically, to our Mendix Cloud, because it's also very easy. In this presentation, I'll show you how, because this presentation is not about Mendix Cloud, it's about Cloud Foundry, which can be on-premises, which can be in a public cloud provider by like IBM Bluemix or Pivotal Web Services or others. So, thank you for being here. And before we start, some self-deprecating humor. Do you know who these guys are? Right, so we have Bob Dylan on the left and Hillary Clinton on the right. So, have you heard a concert by Bob Dylan recently? No, probably not. I did, it's crap. Have you heard a speech by Hillary Clinton recently? Well, they both sound like me at the moment. My voice is kind of messed up, so sorry for that. But like Hillary Clinton and Bob Dylan, I have a great audience, which is very loyal, and they come and they listen to me nevertheless, and they pay attention to the message. So I hope that's what you do today as well. So thank you again for being here, because if not for you, I would not be giving this presentation. I would be very quiet in a corner somewhere. I'd like to begin with the story about Google. On a Friday in the early 2000s, Larry Page, co-founder of Google, was using Google itself to look up something on the internet, right? It was back then already the best way to look up things on the internet. So what did he do? He browsed something and then he saw an ad, and it was a terrible ad. It had nothing to do with what he was searching for. It wasn't relevant. Right, so what did he do? He printed a page and added some text. These ads suck. He posted it on the wall in a coffee corner, and that's it. The problem wasn't solved, but a couple of engineers at Google saw this ad, and they thought, I know why. I know these algorithms, I know basically how the search engine works. This is something that I can fix. Right? So what did they do, these engineers? They didn't just think about this algorithm and that's it. They actually started programming. So on Friday they went home, or they said in the office, I don't know, whatever, I wasn't there. But they got onto their computers and they started programming the solution, and they started working on Saturday, on Sunday, and on Monday morning at 5 a.m. they had deployed a prototype in a shadow copy of their production environment, and they sent the link to Larry Page. And Larry Page thought, this is genius. This solves so many problems. And the result was a faster, better, and cheaper algorithm than what they had before. And this innovation led to the multi-billion-dollar AdWords industry that Google now has. So you might think, what does this have to do with me, right? I'm in an IT organization, whatever, like I don't give my engineers stock options, I don't pay them extreme salaries, so I'm not Google, right? But every company is becoming an IT company. You need to innovate, you need to get the most out of your IT departments to get results. You need to differentiate that business, and you do that using IT. So, would this be something that you see happening in your organization? Would you see developers being enthusiastic? Would they feel empowered that they go home on Friday, they start programming all weekend, and on Monday, you have a prototype? No, probably not. So, yeah, first a warning, I use this option in Google Images, labeled for reuse, which means it's not copyrighted material. So the images are kind of cheesy and not the best ones that I could use, but they don't have copyright, right? So you're all safe, you're not infringing here, it's perfect. So here's the first cheesy image. So this is one of your developers, right? Imagine that you have a couple of developers, they see your problem, and they want to fix it. They see like, they group up, 3 of them, and they start working on this, this algorithm. At least in their head, right? They think, okay, this is something that I can solve. I can write server code. I can make this, this thing work, your algorithm. So they decide to think on, at the coffee corner on Friday, and his friend pops up, and he says, well, actually, I mean, we can write server code, but to present the working prototype on Monday, we also need database management. We also need a front end. We need HTML, CSS, JavaScript. We 3 were not the best persons to do that. So we invented Mendix, right? You can do all of this in the Mendix modeler. It's super easy for anyone to create applications. Well, anyone, like you should be a bit text-heavy, but you don't need to go all, like, don't need to know all the details about server code, about writing Java or HTML. It's mostly drag and drop. So you're happy again, right? They think, okay, we can actually do this. Using Mendix, we can create a prototype of this app, we can make logic, we can make forms, and we don't have to manage the database. But then we need to deploy it somewhere. And I think this is a problem that most of you have, regardless of you're using Mendix or not. If you're using PHP, if you're using Java, if you use Python, anything, you still have to deploy it somewhere. And that's a struggle, right? So the next obstacle they see is I need to deploy this somewhere. I need an application server. Well, luckily, one of these guys knows a bit about VMs, and he has a friend in the system administration department. So he thinks, okay, I can spin up an app server. We've got this covered. His other friend, who's a bit smarter, thinks, well, right, he's in a suit. That's also why he's smarter. I know about DNS. I do not know about DNS. I also don't know about the database server. We're in a pickle here, right? We cannot deploy this thing by ourselves. Then their other colleague thinks, yeah, that's not even the end, right? We're already in trouble, and we also need an HTTPS router. We need to publish this on the internet somewhere. We need to have SSL certificates. We need a budget, right? Because this thing with a dedicated application server, database server, and more, we need money. Our manager needs to approve this. And if we do anything that touches any production system at all, we need release approval. Right? That sucks. So this is Bernie Sanders, and even he starts to look into the future and says, okay, Monday morning, no, we're not going to make it. Right? But most people are not like Bernie Sanders. If they see they can't win, they stop. Bernie Sanders doesn't. So this is basically the organization, and they're fed up with this. So to empower your development teams to actually allow them to do great stuff, you need like a Motu or Pioneer team or a Settler team, whatever you like to call it. At least you need to get out of the way of these teams as an organization and with your tools. You need to give the right tools to these guys so they can really just deploy as soon as possible and develop as soon as possible. And you need to get rid of all these budget things. Right? It's a lot easier said than done, I know. But you should try. And that's what this talk is about. But all these dependencies that you add to a team, right? Budget approval, server creation, DNS management, etc., they're all dependencies. And if you have a team that needs to innovate, a dependency is like the worst thing that you can possibly have. Because then, in the weekend, you're not going to call your friends in the database team. So, can you also sacrifice a couple of hours in your weekend because, you know, we're working on something fun here. Can you help us out? And they're like, oh, no, this is my day job. Screw this. You're on your own. So to these teams, each dependency is an obstacle. And not just a road bump, it's a big obstacle. Right? In my head, when I was a developer, I thought that anything with an interaction with another team is like equivalent to like 4 hours of programming. I would rather have 4 hours of programming if I could work around something than go to another team to ask them for something. So it's not a road bump, it's a big-ass mountain. That's each obstacle is a big-ass mountain. Think about that. So what can we do to remove these obstacles? Well, you might say you need a DevOps team, right? You need to have development and operations in one team so they can be self-reliant, so that they can create their own servers, manage their own infrastructure, etc. You would be right. So basically, your DevOps team is this. It's an amazing car that can climb mountains. Right? This is also not the best picture I could find. There are more, but again, copyright. It's a bitch. So you create a DevOps team, highly specialized people. You put them in this car, and all these obstacles that you have, they start traversing them. They go up and down and up and down, and they get results. Problem is that these guys are smart, and these guys like to climb mountains for fun, but the people in your team don't, right? They think our goal is not to climb a mountain, our goal is to go from A on the ID on Friday to a working prototype on Monday. These mountains, I want to get rid of them. So the more often they do this, the more often they start to think, okay, we need a better solution. And what's the best solution? To go from A to B with the mountain in the middle? You dig a tunnel. Right? It's a big investment, but in the end, it saves you so much time. And you don't need this car anymore. You can have a normal team, like still a DevOps team, but the operations team is very smart. It just does the bare necessities. And they can drive a Toyota Corolla, for example. So what is the tunnel in our actual example? Well, the tunnel is a PaaS. It's Cloud Foundry. Cloud Foundry is for deployment what Mendix is for development. It makes things that are hard, standard, automated, and API-ified. And the best thing about this is you can have both. Right? Since a couple of years, we can now deploy Mendix applications on top of Cloud Foundry, and it's very easy. Let me show you how Cloud Foundry works, more or less, and why this model with Mendix of Cloud Foundry is great for you. This is the PaaS model. I'm not sure if you're familiar with this picture. I don't think I can zoom in. A bit late for that. Anyway, this is your all the things that you have. This is very low in your IT stack. So this is very low level: network, storage, servers, virtualization, operating system, middleware, runtime, data, and applications. Right? And it's the same in all these columns. So with your own traditional IT team, if you do your own hardware, you have this. Now with Amazon, Azure, etc., these things have become commoditized. Right? Unless you have high demands, it doesn't make much sense to do your own hardware. Well, you don't have to, at least. You can just go to any of these providers, and they compete on prices, so that really shows that it's commoditized, and you can buy them, and it works. And you can start here. You can manage the OS. Right? It's much less of an overhead. Cloud Foundry goes a couple of steps further. It also manages the OS, it also manages the middleware, and it manages the runtime. So you only have to worry about data and applications. Pretty simple, right? Last Mendix World, Johanna, the CTO, presented this overview. Basically, your infrastructure comes from here. It's a software-defined data center and hardware. Cloud Foundry is the PaaS, or the foundational PaaS, and the services marketplace is the added value within this layer. So it's the PaaS layer. And then Mendix sits on top of that as easily creating apps and connecting all these apps between each other. So what is Cloud Foundry? It's a platform as a service. It's the open source Heroku that was there before, and it's very popular with developers, so they might know about it. It takes your code and just runs it, right? So all you have to do is sit on your laptop, get some source code, push it into your Cloud Foundry cluster, and it runs. The apps are made available over HTTP as web apps or mobile, whatever, as long as it's an HTTP app. and DNS is done for you automatically. From an organization standpoint, it was made inside of EMC and VMware. Then they created a new company, Pivotal, which open source Cloud Foundry, and now they're creating a platform on top of Cloud Foundry, which they sell to customers, to enterprises. It's an on-prem solution, and they also have a public offering. There's an open source. The open source thing is backed by the Cloud Foundry Foundation, of which we, Mendix, are a silver member. And major players are launching platforms with us. IBM Bluemix, General Electric Predix, HP Helion, Pivotal, as I said before. And it's IaaS independent, right? IaaS is truly a commodity right now. So it can run on vSphere, it can run on AWS, it can run on OpenStack, and many others. Well, I'm not sure of many others, actually. I think I've only heard these three, but a lot. And the platform upgrades itself without downtime. That's just one of the examples that are nice about Cloud Foundry. So how does Cloud Foundry take this IaaS and transform it into a cluster that you can use? Well, Cloud Foundry, when you start it up, a cluster, it talks to the IaaS API, right? The Infrastructure as a Service API. And it gets storage, virtual machines, a load balancer, and a network. It ties it all together into a working solution. So the storage is still used by the API. It dedicates a lot of these VMs as runners, where actual applications will start to run later on in containers. And HTTP routing makes sure that your app is available via the internet and can be reached. And it offers an API. This does not mean that the API is one VM or something, it's just whatever, an abstraction. It offers an API that you can call from your development machine and push your source code to. And it will take that source code, store it, and make sure that it starts running somewhere. So I have my application source code, right? Directory on my machine. I type cf push my new app to the API. The API starts, says, okay, I have some space available on this runner VM, and I'll allocate a bit of that memory, and I'll start running your app here. Right? And it's available via the internet from your load balancer. Then I want to scale my app, right? I want to Cloud Foundry is scalable horizontally, which means that you get more instances, and vertically, which means that you get bigger instances. And the end user traffic is all routed to the app via the internet. So Cloud Foundry runs anywhere. It runs apps written in Python, Go, Java, PHP, Ruby, and more. That's by default. But it's extendable in two ways. First is build packs. Build packs allow you to go from any framework whatsoever. So if it's a WordPress app or if it's Mendix, if you write a custom build pack for it, Cloud Foundry can transform your source code into something that it can run. So that's what we did. A couple of years ago, we wrote a Mendix Cloud Foundry build pack, and now if you push your deployment package that comes out of the modeler, you can run it on any Cloud Foundry infrastructure. And it's extendable via service brokers. So by default, it only runs code, right? It only runs your application logic, but it doesn't store anything. So how do you store stuff? You add a database service or something like that to your app and utilize it that way. We'll see more about that in a minute. This is the way all these vendors try to make money. It creates a whole new ecosystem of services that can be easily attached and created and added to an app and deleted again when you stop using it. So that's great. So, for example, let's look at an example of a service broker. I mean, this is all a bit techy, right? This whole stuff. But if you're not techy, at least at the end, you'll feel like, oh, I know the internals of Cloud Foundry. I feel super smart. I'm going to tell my developers that I know this, and I know more than they do. So keep that in mind. So what if your infrastructure as a service also provide databases? You can create one manually, and then say, in the configuration of your app, you need to talk to this database, but that's a lot of manual work. You can automate that. You can make it a Toyota Corolla instead of a big Jeep. So what you do is you write a service broker, which you register to Cloud Foundry. For example, we'll call it the database as a service here. And it translates Cloud Foundry commands into things that your infrastructure as a service provider understands. So for example, when we say create a new service, database service, I want 100 megabytes of storage, and call it my new database. Then the API will talk to the service broker will talk to the API of your infrastructure provider, and it then exposes the database credentials of the database that it just created automatically to the application. And if you restart the app, it will start using the database, and you're done. This can be done for many types of infrastructure. So I saw IBM Watson already. If you go to Bluemix or Pivot Web Services, and you click Services Marketplace, you see all these things that they try to sell there. And it's a huge list. It's ever growing. Because this model is really simple. And it works really well for all kinds of vendors. So what kind of apps can you run on Cloud Foundry? Well, 12-factor apps, and this is far too much detail, but it's a term that you should remember. 12-factor apps. Go look it up. It has a website. There are links on the end. So why is this all great? What does this have to do with our original story about crossing mountains? Well, first of all, it's completely self-service. So your team is autonomous, it's self-reliant, and it can create anything, anywhere, without needing any other teams from the database team, the system administration team, or anything else. And it's API-ified, right? So that means that they can build CI/CD pipelines with this. CI/CD, it's continuous integration, continuous delivery, means that you push a change, you create a change in your development environment. So in the Mendix modeler, for example, you save, it kicks off a new build, it runs some tests, and if they pass, then it deploys automatically to production. So that development, that pushing to production becomes so cheap that you can just completely automate it, right? It used to be that you have monthly releases or something, you build it, and it takes a long time for your code to actually arrive there. With this CI/CD pipeline, you deploy 10, 20, 30 times a day. And that's what the pros in this industry, like Facebook and Google, that's what they all do. It's beautiful. So that's advantage one. The other is it's scalable and pay as you go. It becomes so cheap to run a small app and to scale it out when you need to. You don't need to reserve anything up front, right? You start with 500 megabytes of RAM, something like that, and you scale as you go. If you go to a manager and say, I want to run an app and I need a budget for 500 megabytes, he thinks, okay, that's like 50 cents a month. Don't even bother me, just do it, right? So you take away a lot of the discussions about budgeting. And also a lot of risk. Right? If you stop using this, you just say stop the app, and the memory is freed, and it's reusable by other teams. It's perfect. The third is it's managed. Right? We saw it already in the PaaS model. The 3 columns, you only need to worry about your apps and your data. You have a dedicated team that focuses just on the Cloud Foundry cluster. They keep it up to date, they apply security updates, they make sure that the DNS is automated, everything like that, and it's completely managed. So you don't have to, you just have to pay another company basically to get a Cloud Foundry installation, and that's it. So how do I run my app on this thing? I wanted to give a demo, but my own laptop couldn't be attached to the projector, whatever. If you're interested, I can show you later right here. So first, you go to the Mendix modeler. You say, export my project, create a deployment package that I can actually deploy somewhere. Then you do cf push to your new app. You say, I want to have this deployment package and use the Mendix build pack for Cloud Foundry. Then you say, create a database service, because each Mendix app needs a database. Bind it to the app, set the admin password so I can log in after it started, and then start. That's it. This works in 2 minutes. I can show you after if you're interested. It really works. It's amazing. So this is perfect for CI/CD pipelines, right? Here you make a change, you push the new version to a brand new app. It's greenfield, it has no legacy or anything, it's completely clean. You make sure it starts, and then you can run your tests. If you test run, you can then say, okay, now push not to my new app, but to the production application. It's a script of 5 or 6 lines. It's beautiful. And the next time you want to deploy a new version, you just have to do one command, push this new v2 of my application, push it to the app. Oh, sorry. This was supposed to be a demo, but whatever. So where should I run this? You can do this right now on public Cloud Foundry providers on the right. You can go to Pivotal Web Services right now. You can sign up with a credit card and start running. You can go to IBM Bluemix, sign up with a credit card, or maybe not even, I don't know, and start running. Predix is another provider. I'm not sure if they have it available already. You have Swisscom starting up Cloud Foundry clusters in Switzerland. You have SAP HANA and CenturyLink's AppFog, and maybe even more. I'm not sure. It keeps growing. If you want to run it on-prem or in a private cloud, you can go for Pivotal Cloud Foundry, IBM Bluemix local or private, HP Helion, Staccato, or you can run the open source edition for free yourself. You just need the talent and the training of people to actually make it happen. But we do it in the Mendix Cloud. It's manageable. So and others are Cloud.gov. So I'm not sure if you heard of 18F. That's the American government's brand new, extremely cool IT organization. That's really like a Mo2 team. They kick ass and they get stuff done that no one ever thought was possible. Well, one of the things that they're launching now is Cloud.gov. It's a Cloud Foundry cluster available for all government agencies to use. So you cannot do it, but it's there. And we have the Mendix Cloud. We don't expose Cloud Foundry itself to you as an API, but we use it like under the hood to actually run your apps. We're doing it for our free tiers right now, and later this year we're also launching it for our enterprise and professional tiers. So you think that's all cool? Is this the real thing? Well, yes. You have all these sponsors in the Cloud Foundry Foundation, major players. I mean, it's no guarantee for success, but these are all only the platinum and gold members. They have a lot more silver members, of which we are one. There were too much to fit on one screen. You can go to cloudfoundry.org and look it up yourself. Another thing is that we've been going to the Cloud Foundry conferences for 3 years now, right? So just like Mendix World, they have a conference. In the beginning, people were like, this is cool, this could work. It's cool technology. Then 2 years ago, when we went, or last year, we actually saw people starting to use the platform for real. They had their first production apps live, and they were really enthusiastic about it. This year, we went, and I spoke to a lot of people, and I spoke to people from 4 different companies that had over 1,000 apps running and like hundreds in production. So the adoption rate within these companies is gigantic. So if you think about that, they have maybe 400 apps in production. It's 1 app a day, right, in the last year. They launch 1 new app a day. I'm not sure how big these teams are, but these are big organizations. I can't name them because whatever, but in my opinion, this is enough. But if you need something else, a testimonial for PaaS, which is actually very bad because this is not about Cloud Foundry. This is about Google App Engine, but it's also PaaS. You don't have to worry about anything. A team at Google recently did a blog post where they said, we reduced our maintenance, our overhead, that is not development, not adding new features, but just maintaining servers and infrastructure. We went from 60% of our time doing that to 5%. Right? And that's annoying work that you don't want to do as a team. So think about that this team is crossing these mountains all the time in their big Jeep, and they think, why don't we just build a tunnel? Well, PaaS is your tunnel. So the take-home question for all of you here is, what is your platform strategy? You need to think about this seriously. If you want to enable your developers to actually get stuff done, you need to invest in a PaaS. So wrapping up, you should avoid dependencies like the plague, and you should get a platform as a service. These are some links. You can make some pictures, and you can now applause and then ask questions. Sure.
One of our big problems is going back to legacy systems through firewalls. Okay, so we went out to the Azure cloud and we did our own deployment there, and then we had a big issue with coming back and pulling. So we were in Holland here in the cloud,
yep.
And our servers were back in South Africa, and we had absolutely terrible sort of transport problems on the network and things. So we had to go back internally to make that work. But one of the bigger issues is getting through the VPNs and all that sort of thing. So we created our own VPN in the cloud, and that's when it all fell apart. So this is one of our big problems now, is where do we go and actually make that whole, that connecting to legacy systems easy. Because all the corporates have big firewalls, and that's just what you've got to face.
Well, if you're consulting and you go to these big companies, you sell them a PaaS, right? That's actually what we did in the last year. We did it at 2 companies. We said, okay, so you want this automation. You want to have everything in-house. You want to have security, so you want VPNs and stuff. But you also want the speed of what we offer in the Mendix Cloud. Then we said, okay, buy a PaaS, and you're done. So you get all that in-house. You don't need to worry about all the VPNs and that anymore, because the app is in the same data center. And that's what they did. And they're having quite a success with that. So I think the other thing that I sensed in your question is that we don't have enough capabilities to move between the Mendix Cloud and other systems at this moment. And you're right, that's something we're working on. So we're starting to work with customers that actually want to migrate between different environments. It's great for no vendor lock-in, right? To prove that you can actually move your data from our cloud offering to somewhere else. And right now, I mean, it's starting up phase, but we already see that we can easily script this. We can make standard export images, and we can make it almost like drag and drop to move from one environment to the other. So the copying files, copying database, it's all more streamlined. So it's possible. I mean, we're doing it manually right now, like climbing a mountain. We're going to make it so. Oh, can you mind the microphone there?
Good morning. Thank you for the talk. I'm interested to understand, Mendix's support model. If you choose a private cloud deployment, you charged extra. So
Sure.
There's an extra support fee.
Yep.
What's the vision for Mendix in terms of using Cloud Foundry? Should you be using it just for dev QA? And then what's the license impact? I mean, what's your recommended approach? How should we be
Sure.
thinking about Cloud Foundry?
I understand your question. So it's definitely not just for dev and QA. You should also go to prod there. One of the things about the license fee for on-premise deployment is that we have difficulty supporting it because customers always install their own servers, right? And they're all different. They're all like pets and cattle, if you know what I mean. So they're all small pets. This is server A, server B, server C. So server A is Windows with IIS, and server B is Linux system with Red Hat, and the other is Debian, etc. So it's very difficult for us to manage that. Exactly. So Cloud Foundry, if you adopt that, then it becomes a standard building block that you just have in-house, and we say, okay, we fully support Cloud Foundry, right? Depending on the vendors. I mean, if you roll your own version, then there might be problems, but if you adopt one of these platforms like Bluemix or Pivotal, then it's much easier for us to support it. So I cannot say anything right now about what we're going to change in the license model. I think that's something that will surely be easier in the future, right?
Disincentivizing customers to use Cloud Foundry.
Exactly, yeah. So we should definitely go in that direction. Any others? Thank you. Oh, right, sorry, one more thing. There is a Cloud Foundry meetup. Oh. There is a Mendix hosted Cloud Foundry meetup on the 23rd of June, so this month, in Rotterdam, right? At our office? Yes. Okay, at our office in Rotterdam. It's for the Benelux, so even if you're from Belgium or Luxembourg, God forbid, you can come and enjoy it. Okay, goodbye. Thank you.